What's happening? Welcome in the Matt Bernier Show on DRF TV, live.drf.com, livestream.com, the Daily Racing Forums Twitter handle. That would be at DRF Inside Post, as well as the Daily Racing Forums Facebook page. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. This is the recap edition of the Matt Bernier Show, taking a look back at racing from the weekend of May the 19th. The big one happened to be the Grade 1 Preakness for 3-year-olds going a mile and 3/16 down at Pimlico. If you listen to this podcast form, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com. If you listen on YouTube, click that subscribe button. You'll get all the latest offerings from DRF TV, and obviously give us the thumbs up, little likes there. That always helps us get things pushed out and in good order. Voice is a little bit on the weaker side, still trying to catch up. We were out there helping out with the World Horse Players Tour, the inaugural event going on out at Santa Anita. Everything went well. Hopefully everybody involved was pleased how it went. Had some fun. Now we're back here, getting right back down to business, and let's start off with the big one, taking a look back at the Grade 1 Preakness. Let's take a look at the field. There were 8 signed on in here. Justify was looking for the middle jewel in the United States Triple Crown. He went off as the 2-5 favorite. He'd have to deal with good magic every step of the way. Dave Rodman, kudos to all the race callers this weekend down there. Dave Rodman and Larry Colmus, good luck. This was the stretch run from what we could see anyway, coming out of the fog of the Preakness.
In the meantime, down to the inside, Bravazzo working a little bit harder as they move to the top of the stretch. A head-and-head battle. Looks like a showdown in the fog. It is good magic on the inside. Justify on the outside. Even turns. And they're head-to-head into the stretch as they make the turn for home. And now Justify and Mike Smith trying to grab the lead. Justify begins to pull away. Justify is in front. Justify, and here's Tenfold on the outside, Bravazzo, Justify, Bravazzo, Tenfold, then Good Magic and Lone Sailor, followed by Sporting Chance.
Justify does get the job done. He prevails. 2 legs down, 1 to go. Elmont, New York in 3 weeks. We'll dive into that in a little bit. Pays $2.80 as the winner. The number 8 Bravazzo runs second for Wayne Lucas as a 15-1 shot, and Tenfold for Steve Asmussen. The longest shot in the field at 26-1 runs third. Good Magic, the second choice at odds of 7-2, runs fourth. A valiant effort. Again, we'll dive into the entirety of the race a little bit here momentarily. First things first, though, let's talk a little bit about your Derby and Preakness winner, Justify. He's 5 of 5 lifetime. He is just under $3 million in career earnings. Think about that. This horse has won nearly $3 million in 5 races. Unbelievable what he's accomplished in a short amount of time. Owned by China Horse Club, Head of Plains Partners LLC, Starlight Racing, and Windstar Farm. Trained by Bob Baffert, bred by John D. Gunther in Kentucky. Ridden to victory by Mike Smith, and you can see the pedigree at the bottom of the horse card. He's by Scat Daddy, out of a Ghost Zapper mare named Stage Magic. Let's get into the details. A 97 Beyer speed figure for Justify. So the first time in his 5 lifetime starts that he did not register a triple-digit Beyer speed figure. However, on the flip side, Timeform US, he earned a 128. Now, I'll dive into sort of the details of all those things momentarily and just compare the 2 races, the Derby and the Preakness. For what it's worth, Timeform US also had the main track at Pimlico. It was sloppy all day, well documented the amount of rain that they had, I believe over 7 inches from Tuesday to Saturday. Timeform US had the main track listed as slightly speed friendly, so it would have played into the hooves of a horse like Justify, who was out there forwardly placed throughout. I bring up the difference in the speed figures because I think it is interesting. You had a number of folks after the race in social media and just in general speak about, well, was this a good effort or a bad effort from Justify? And I shouldn't term it like that. Was this an improvement from the Kentucky Derby? Was this basically status quo, keeping everything on a level playing field? Or did he have a slight regression from his run 2 weeks ago in Louisville? I kind of look at this and say, when you look at the way this race was run, he's out there, and Good Magic is dueling with him every step of the way. He puts Good Magic away, and Good Magic, to his credit, dug in as gamely as he did. And, okay, the figure may come back a little bit light from a Beyer standpoint, but from a Timeform standpoint, it's actually the fastest race he's run of the 2 classic races. He earned a 127 in the Kentucky Derby, and he earned a 128 in the Preakness. So, from that standpoint, he actually ran a better race on Timeform scale as opposed to the Beyers. That's something as a handicapper, you just need to go in and decide what you think of the race as a whole. For what it's worth, Good Magic also, from a Timeform standpoint, now keep in mind, they factor in the pace situation. Good Magic, according to Timeform, ran a better race here in the Preakness than he did in the Derby from a number standpoint, a 127 in the Preakness and a 124 in the Kentucky Derby. Justify is a very, very talented horse. Not breaking any news there. Anybody that has half a nut in their head realizes that. This is a horse that he just continues to get the job done, and it's very admirable. What he has accomplished in such a short amount of time is really unprecedented, and it's very difficult to try to compare him to some of these other horses that we've seen that have been very, very talented in recent years, just simply because he's done so much in such a short amount of time. You know, we talked a little bit about Arrogate, where when he was kind of like a comet, where just was here and there, come and go, and in that short amount of time that you get to see it, it was unbelievable. American Pharoah, we at least got it over the course of a 2-year-old campaign as well as the entirety of a 3-year-old season, and basically every one of them was a brilliant effort, including his Travers that he lost. Justify has really put forth giant efforts in all 5 lifetime starts, but keep in mind his first start was in February. Here we are the 3rd week in May. This horse has done some things in such a short amount of time that it's very, very, very difficult to truly sit there and put some sort of context with it, because it's just something that has not happened before. Now, can he carry this form over to Belmont in 3 weeks to wrap things up for the Triple Crown? From a buyer standpoint, if you look at that, perhaps he's going the wrong way. If you look at the way this race was finished, and Mike Watchmaker, the national handicapper for the Racing Form, brought it up in his weekend column, that generally, when you have bunched up finish, we've talked about it a number of times. If it happened in a maiden claimer, we would say probably not a great field, or probably not any sort of a superior effort in there. The likelihood of all of them running giant races is very slim, as opposed to perhaps all of them running mediocre races. I have to be honest, I thought Justify ran very well. I think this is a good effort. I'm inclined to think that at some point it's going to catch up to him, because I have a hard time imagining that this is a horse that's going to all of a sudden he's going to buck every trend that there is, and that he's going to win the Triple Crown 3 weeks from now, and his 6th race in 16 weeks at a 1.5 miles, 3 different states, all over the country, different conditions. We'll find out if he finally gets a fast track. Perhaps that moves him up as opposed to a wet track. Who knows? I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see what kind of field we get assembled for a race like the Belmont. Let's talk about Good Magic before we talk about Bravazzo and Tenfold and anyone else. Good Magic, you heard afterward that Chad Brown was not pleased with the way that the race was run with Jose Ortiz, that this was not the plan to go out there to the front. Jose accepted the blame, said that's not, it was on me. That's not how things were supposed to go. I have to be honest with you. If you're being serious, and I understand what Chad's point is, this is a horse that is better with a target. He's just not one to go out there on the lead. You got handled easily 2 weeks ago with that running style. The only way that you could have won this race, in my opinion, and we talked about it a little bit last week in the preview edition. I talked about it in the Race of the Day video. I thought the only way that Good Magic could beat Justify was to go after him. And I have no complaints with the way that thing played out. I thought that Good Magic ran a great race. I thought Jose rode him perfectly. Go back and watch from what you can see. The NBC feed is a little bit clearer than the Pimlico in-house feed, and that's nobody's fault. It's just Mother Nature just really dealt the folks in Baltimore a really bad hand this week. Jose's got a really, really hard hold on Good Magic. And I think when they go into the first turn, you can see Jose look out over on his right side, waiting for Justify to go and clear over. But they were going an honest clip. They went 23 for the opening quarter, and when he couldn't clear, to me, it's not a matter of Good Magic and Jose just being hell-bent on trying to get to the front. He's sitting there, and he's got 2 fistfuls of dynamite. But if all of a sudden Justify is going to just kind of go at a relatively easy pace or a relatively easy gallop, if they don't go and push him, this probably is just a runaway. So I don't know how you can sit there and criticize Jose Ortiz for the ride on Good Magic. I thought he rode the horse fine, and I thought the horse ran really, really well. There's nothing wrong with getting beat by, you got beat by Justify by 2.5 lengths 2 weeks ago, and you got beat here by what, roughly a length? I mean, this is a really nice horse, Good Magic, and I don't know, he's just probably not as good as Justify. That's not a bad thing. It's not a knock. I mean, there are a lot of horses. Probably all of them are not as talented as Justify as far as 3-year-olds are concerned. I don't know. I don't know how you can sit there and complain about it. I'd like that they're not going to run in the Belmont, and we'll find out. Maybe he'll be ready to go for Saratoga, and we'll get a bigger and stronger Good Magic, but I thought he ran very well here, and I think he's a horse going forward that you obviously have to take seriously wherever he does show up. Let's talk about Bravazzo and Tenfold a little bit. Tenfold, longest shot on the board, came home in 43.77. When you look at that as opposed to Justify, who came home in 44.51, Tenfold certainly looked good, and this was a little bit of a surprise effort from him, the 95 buyer and the 125 Timeform US rating. The interesting thing is he popped back to his left lead at the end, and I know Steve Asmussen is saying we're going to go on to the Belmont and only defeated by, a little more than a half length. To me, I do wonder a little bit about distance with him because of that little lead situation, and generally speaking, that doesn't, you got to go a heck of a lot farther 3 weeks from now than you did on Saturday. Mile and 3/16 as opposed to a mile and a half. That's an entirely different ballgame. The horse that I'll pat myself on the back, I liked him coming into this spot to run second, and I kind of like him coming out of here. I'm not saying I'm going to pick him, but I think Bravazzo ran really, really well. And the concern is on the far turn, he looks like he's in deep water when Luis Saez is really getting into him, asking him to run. And you can see when you look at the chart, at the top of the lane, Bravazzo goes from third to fifth. Now, it may have only been just by minor margins, but he clearly kind of just wasn't getting around for one reason or another. But then once he got out into the clear, and Saez, I thought it was a great ride, angle him out into the clear. This horse finished very, very well. 44.07 for his final stretch. And again, we talked about it with Justify. He came home in 44.51. From a gallop out standpoint, okay, Bravazzo didn't finish or gallop out as strong as a Justify or a Tenfold did, but I just have a funny feeling that the way that this horse runs, that it will translate to Belmont Park in 3 weeks. And my logic with him coming into this spot, that the Louisiana Derby was basically a non-starter, so the Kentucky Derby was his first start in almost 8 weeks, and then this was a much tighter version. Lucas makes it seem like this is a horse that's only going to continue to improve with more running more frequently. He's not nearly as talented as Justify, and I think that's the thing that people, when you pick against a horse like Justify, it's really not because you think someone's better than him. And the reason that I didn't like Good Magic on Saturday, it's not because I don't think he's talented. I think he's very obviously the second most talented horse that ran in the Preakness, but circumstances get you beat. American Pharoah was the best horse in the Travers a few years ago. Circumstances got him beat. Frosted going after him, softening him up, and then getting beat by a horse coming from off of it. And Keen Ice. It's not because Keen Ice was better than him. It's because circumstances got American Pharoah beat. I think circumstances could possibly end up getting Justify beat. All the racing in such a short amount of time. Perhaps someone gets aggressive with him early on, and then you get someone that can come from just off of it and get the job done. Who knows? We'll find out. But that's the logic with me anyway with Bravazzo going forward. I'm not saying I'm going to pick him. I'm going to have to wait and see. It sounds like you'll get Hofberg and Vino Rosso, and perhaps you get some other new shooters, or fresh faces anyway, that were waiting coming from the Derby for the Belmont. But I think Bravazzo is a very interesting horse going forward for a race like the Belmont, because I don't think the distance is going to be much of an issue for him. But the story of Saturday afternoon, the real story, outside of Justify, was the fog and the rain and just the miserable conditions. But none of that could stop Justify. Justify is now a perfect 5 for 5, just under $3 million in career earnings. He earns a 97 buyer speed figure, winning the 143rd Preakness, and a 128 Timeform US rating. And guess what, folks? It's been a little while, a few years, but we got another Triple Crown on the line 3 weeks from now in Elmont, New York. As I mentioned, discussing the Preakness, the story of Saturday is Justify, and justifiably so. See what I did there? A little pun. But the other headline was the weather and the conditions down in Baltimore, because the rain was undeniable and relentless. The fog was just an added sort of wrinkle to the entire element. And unfortunately, because of the conditions and the amount of moisture and rain over the entirety of the week, only one turf race could be run on Saturday afternoon. That ended up being the 9th race. The Gala Rett for fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up. Let's take a look at the field. Only 6 went in here, and I understand anyone involved with any of the other horses that came out of it. You had 2 scratches of Cambodia and Special Event. This race was run in an absolute bog, and I'm going to be totally frank and totally honest. I don't think there's a heck of a lot you can take out of this race other than the fact that Ultra Brat clearly likes running on a very, very soft, boggy turf course. Dave Rodman with the stretch run of the Gala Rett.
coming alive while very wide on the course. Into the stretch, and it's Ultra Brat kicking away. Alicia's World driving hard. Blessed Silence trying to make some headway is pushed to second now, but it's a 5-length lead for Ultra Brat. Ultra Brat at Jose Ortiz. Ultra Brat in the final furlong, all alone now, as Blessed Silence firmly holds second, and Brooks House on the outside trying to combat Alicia's World to get up for the third position. Here is Ultra Brat in the Gala Rett. Sharpened victory.
Ultra Brat gets the job done as the 8-5 second choice in the Gala Rett. Pays $5.40. The number 6, Blessed Silence, making her second start in North America for Christophe Clement, runs second at odds of 7-2. And Brooks House at odds of 18-1 rounds out your trifecta, pays $4.40 to show. So certainly you could have spiced things up a little bit. Defeated the 6-5 favorite. Alicia's World runs fourth in this spot. Let's talk a little bit more about Ultra Brat, shall we? The winner of the Gala Rett. She's 6-14 lifetime, over $378,000 in career earnings, owned by Alex Campbell Jr., trained by Graham Motion. A big weekend for Graham Motion down there in the Baltimore area. Bred by Ray Hansen in Kentucky, ridden by Jose Ortiz. The pedigree, she is by Uncle Mo out of a Stormcat mare named Professor McGonigal. 100 Beyer speed figure and 127 time form U.S. rating for this filly, or mare at this point. She's 5 years old. Ultra Brat. She, considering she was close to the pace, and time form U.S. has the pace basically throughout listed as fast. Quarter, half, three-quarters, top of the lane. This was a big effort from her. She came home in 35.12. Don't really read anything into that, because this was run over an impossibly slow turf course. When you look and see that this was a mile and a 16th and they stopped the clock in 53, I mean, we're talking about just an absolute sludge fest out there. So, again, I hate to keep this recap very brief. Tip of the cap to the connections. Well done. Congrats, Graham Motion, and everybody else involved with this horse. But I don't know that you learn a heck of a lot going forward. Ultra Brat, we already knew she was a nice little mare, but this, to me, all of a sudden, because she won by over 10 lengths over a condition that you're never going to see in North America. Hardly ever. I shouldn't say never. I mean, this was reminiscent to what we saw up at Woodbine last year when Bullard's Alley went out there and earned a 115 Beyer or whatever it was. I mean, this was about as much of a bog as you're going to see. And this would have probably been even significantly wet for the Europeans. I mean, there was an unbelievable amount of moisture in that turf course. So, again, I don't know what you want to do with it going forward. Ultra Brat, she has tactical speed. She's won at Gulfstream in the past, so clearly she can handle a very firm turf course. And God knows she can handle just the boggiest of bogs. Ultra Brat, 100 Beyer, 127 time form U.S. rating, winning the Gala Rett. 10th race Saturday was for older males on the main track. I shouldn't say older males. Older horses going 6 furlongs in the Grade 3 Maryland Sprint. $150,000 was the purse. This was the field. 9 were signed on. On paper, it looked like a 2-horse race between the post-time favorite, Long Haul Bay, and the second choice, Switzerland. Now, you needed to make a decision what you thought. Long Haul Bay was making his second start off of a considerable layoff, but he came back in raging form. And then Switzerland, if you think that there's a scenario where he doesn't make the lead, perhaps he's not good enough to win. And I know a lot of people just had the old Switzerland stuck in the back of their head. You know, the horse that was always burning money at short prices in New York. And he just never seemed to be able to get over the hump. And then he finally did, and he's transferred over to Steve Asmussen. But which version were you going to get against the best horses he's faced really in his entire career? Pretty emphatic answer. Dave Rodman with the call.
Off just a bit, so they're at the quarter pole, top of the stretch, out of the fog and homeward bound here. And on the inside, it appears to be Switzerland to the outside. Is Long Haul Bay, Switzerland just in front. Switzerland out of the final furlong. In the final furlong, it is Switzerland from Long Haul Bay by 3. And Lewisfield is in third, and Irish Colonel has worked to fourth with a 16th left to go. Switzerland, a sharp Switzerland by 3 in the sprint.
Switzerland blows the doors off this field, gets the job done in the Maryland Sprint, pays $7.80. Long Haul Bay, again, beaten as the 8-5 favorite. He runs second, a very clear second, though. And then the third place finisher was Lewisfield, who went off at odds of 9-2, made a bit of a mid-race move, tried to split horses, and just could not hang on with those two big horses signed on that finished first and second. Let's take a look a little bit closer at Switzerland. He's now 4 of 11 lifetime. Again, it seems like a long time ago, that horse that didn't want to get the job done. Now he's getting it done on big stages, over $273,000 in career earnings, owned by Woodford Racing LLC, trained by Steve Asmussen. A big weekend for Steve. Bred by Branch Family Trust in Kentucky, ridden to victory by Ricardo Santana Jr. And the pedigree at the bottom of the horse card, he is by Speightstown out of an Indian Charlie mare named Checkers. 102 Beyer speed figure, 122 time form U.S. rating for Switzerland. Keep in mind, again, the main track at Pimlico, time form U.S. had color-coded as slightly speed-friendly, so that could have played very easily into Switzerland's hands. But I have to be honest, the way that he ran and the way that he finished this race, I understand they went relatively slow in the grand scheme of things early on, 22-4, and really just a few hundredths off of a 23 opening quarter, which for a horse like Switzerland, who's very, very fast, that was a relatively soft front end, and a half in 45-3. This is a horse that he figured if he could just handle the wet going, which he had shown in the past that he could, he was probably going to be tough to beat from there, and indeed he was. But I love the way that he finished here, because Long Haul Bay came up and took a shot at him. They were very, very close there momentarily, and then next thing you know, you look at their final eighths of a mile. Long Haul Bay came home in 12:31. Switzerland came home in 12:05. So, I mean, he finished this thing very, very well. Asmussen, after the race, said he felt pretty good when they saw the way that everything played out early on, and also knowing that this horse just came to him in raging form. And you know, look, I mean, from a speed figure standpoint, this horse makes a lot of sense in a lot of those races. And Steve said it sounds like they're going to be taking a pretty big shot in some big races going forward. They're going to wait and see. Nothing really official what they'll be pointing toward, but you would have to imagine you're probably thinking races at Saratoga. Perhaps you take a shot in a race like the Vanderbilt, 6 furlongs. To me, I don't know that you want to stretch him out to 7, but boy, this is looks like all of a sudden Asmussen has him in just raging form again. 102 Beyer, 122 time form U.S. rating. Switzerland looks very, very good. Long Haul Bay also looks very, very good. I do wonder if he's a horse that perhaps would appreciate a little bit more distance. Maybe he goes out to that 7/8 of a mile kind of a distance and he can get some things done. Didn't run poorly in here. 94 Beyer, 117 time form U.S. rating. Chad Brown said as much post-race. Second best on the day. And you know what? Nothing wrong with that. You ran a very, very good effort here. And I suppose he didn't come from off of it, but I suppose if you think that just a horse with equal or comparable ability got the jump on him over a track like this on the main track on Saturday at Pimlico, maybe that was all the difference. I just happen to think Switzerland ran a better race on Saturday, and perhaps at this point in their career, perhaps Switzerland is a better horse going forward, or at least has more possibilities as far as bigger prizes are concerned. But I think both of the top two ran very, very well. And Lewisfield ran well, considering what he is. He's not probably of this caliber from a class standpoint, but he acquitted himself just nicely, and he fits in a lot of lower-level races. But the top two ran very well. Switzerland, no question about it, the best, though, in the Maryland Sprint. 102 Beyer, 122 time form U.S. rating. Oddly enough, though, might not have been the best sprinter that we saw for Steve Asmussen on Saturday afternoon. As good as Switzerland was winning the Maryland Sprint, perhaps even more impressive was the other Asmussen that ran on Saturday afternoon in a sprint race on the main track, this time restricted to 3-year-olds. Let's take a look at the field of 9 3-year-olds that ran in the 9th running of the Chick Lange. You had a heavy favorite, a horse called Matoli. Went bet down to 2-5. This is a horse coming in with a 107 Beyer to his name. Compared to the rest of the field, he just towered over them on paper. Now, the only sort of concern was the wet racing surface, because he flopped as a pretty, I don't want to say he flopped, but he definitely disappointed as a heavy favorite a few starts back on a wet racing surface. Would that be the thing that got him beat, or was he just simply superior to all of his contemporaries? Guess what? He was simply superior. Here's the stretch run of the Chick Lange.
Time Revival deep out third position, and Pierre shot down to the inside. Clouded Judgment cuts the corner, and here's Satosh on the far outside trying to produce a late run, but it's Matoli after a 45.93 half mile, still going strong, and going strong under a hand ride. Some kind of sprinter here. It is Matoli and Ricardo Santana Jr. Matoli will win for fun on the line by 7, still having fun from second, and then it was
Matoli gets the job done as the 2-5 favorite, pays $2.80 on top. Still having fun, runs second as a 9-1 choice. And the third place finisher, Clouded Judgment, odds of 27-1, rounds out your trifecta that paid a nice number in this spot. Paid $90 for a buck, considering you had a 2-5 shot on top. Speaking of the 2-5 shot, Matoli, he is now 4 of 7 lifetime. He has never been out of the money. over $348,000 in career earnings, owned by William and Corinne Helligbrock. I apologize if I mispronounced that name. Trained by Steve Asmussen, bred by Edward A. Cox Jr. in Kentucky, ridden to victory again by Ricardo Santana Jr. In the pedigree at the bottom of the horse card by Escandrea out of an Indian Charlie mare named Indian Miss. Maybe not the gaudy 107 from 2 starts back, but he got a 104 buyer this time around, did Mitole, and from a time form standpoint, only a 120 because time form had every fraction of this race color-coded blue, meaning it was on the slower side of things. And again, you factor that in with the fact that the main track, they had it color-coded as slightly speed-friendly. Mitole had a lot of things go his way in this race. But it's really hard to look at that race visually and not be blown away by what you've seen, considering this horse was really good down at Oaklawn. Now he's shown that he can ship a little bit and be equally as impressive. Now that he's also proven that a wet track is not going to be an issue for him, he can go a heck of a lot faster than what we saw on Saturday, and I think that's also a very, very key piece. Steve Asmussen afterward said that this is a little bit of I don't even know the right way to put it, but he just said he's not a very good workhorse, and he needed a race like this to get to a peak effort, and he brought up that he had some gait issues. They've brought him along. They've brought him out there. He's a little bit quieter now in the gate. He said that Ricardo Santana, who I've really been impressed with watching him ride a little bit more and more, they get along very well. There's a good sort of chemistry between the two, rider and horse, and now you're looking at a horse that he is pointing to the Woody Stevens. Steve said he thought he needed this race to get to the Woody Stevens and be ready to go. You have a horse coming in with consecutive triple-digit buyers in a division that might be a little bit light as far as the overall talent is concerned. Now, perhaps you'll get a horse that turns back, like a horse you'll see later on in the stakes montage, like Axeman for Bob Baffert. Perhaps you get some other horses that show up in there, very talented runners. But Mitole looks like he could be a legitimate sort of 3-year-old that by the end of the season, if he continues at this rate, he could possibly be one that could hold his own against the older horses. And that's something that these sprinters, usually 3-year-olds, everyone just gets so enamored with trying to get onto the Triple Crown Trail and try those races because usually and generally speaking, that's where the money is. But you occasionally get those instances where the connections know what they've got. We know we've got a stone-cold sprinter, and we think he can be really, really good. Based on what this horse has done on the racetrack, Mitole could be a very, very interesting talent going forward. And truthfully, the sky looks to be the limit. He's very fast. He can handle a wet track. He can ship. And guess what? He has earned big, big speed figures on a number of different scales. Mitole is an interesting and exciting prospect going forward for this 3-year-old sprint division and potentially the sprint division in general going forward. Mitole gets the job done in the Chick Lange, and it's on to the Woody Stevens. 104 buyer, 120 time form U.S. rating on Saturday afternoon. Let's go back and take a look at the main event on Friday afternoon. The 3-year-old fillies took center stage in the Black-Eyed Susan. This was the field, 1 1/8 miles. On the main track, you had a field of 9. Unfortunately, again, sloppy conditions. No breaking news there. We know how bad it was all week down there in Baltimore. Red Ruby was an interesting horse coming in. She was nearly the favorite, just 10 cents off the favorite, actually, when it was all said and done. The favorite was Sarah Street, bet down to 5-2. Another 5-2 shot was Red Ruby, who we hadn't seen for quite some time. Had a little bit of a hiccup, took a while to get back to the track. Coming in here with a light work tab, but it sounded like she was looking good down in Keeneland prior to this effort. We'll find out. Did she actually get the job done? Dave Rodman with the call.
And it's Red Ruby who rolls her home from Coach Rocks. Red Ruby, Coach Rocks. It is 5 lengths back to the others. Remember, between horses, stakes on the plane, try to run on for a share. Good one, Honey, on the extreme outside. It's wide open for third. Red Ruby pulling away and shifting over to the rail under Paco Lopez. Red Ruby at the 16th pole with a solid advantage now, and she's going to win the Black-Eyed Susan Stakes. Red Ruby. Sharp in victory. Coach Rocks was second.
Red Ruby, much the best, winning this year's Black-Eyed Susan. Pays $7.80 on top. Coach Rocks was the pace setter. Look, no match for the winner, but very clearly second best in this spot as the 3-1 third choice. And then Indy Union for Jeremiah Englehart coming from well off of the pace. It just kind of is what she is at this point. Runs third, a graded stakes placing, always valuable at odds. of 11 to 1. Let's talk a little bit more about the winner, shall we? Red Ruby is 3 of 5 lifetime, $283,000 in career earnings, owned by Sandra Sexton, Brandy Nicholson, and Steven Nicholson, trained by Kellen Gorder. An impressive training job from Gorder to get her ready to go with such a light foundation as far as workouts are concerned, and so much time between races. Bred by Hargis Sexton, Sandra Sexton, and Silver Fern Farm LLC in Kentucky, ridden by Paco Lopez, and the pedigree by Tisnow out of a Rubiano mare named Caroni. 89 buyer and 112 time form U.S. rating as far as this race is concerned for Red Ruby. She came home in 12:63, so certainly she was finishing nicely in this spot. She was late to change leads. I don't ever like to see that. It's also worth noting 2 of her best races have come on a wet racetrack, so it's hard to ignore the fact that she likes off going. And even with that fact, she still isn't that fast. And I guess that's the tough thing that I have looking at this race. It always feels like, to me, the Black-Eyed Susan is the race of the 3 big graded stakes races for the 3-year-old fillies that are run on these big weekends, the Derby weekend, Preakness weekend, Belmont weekend. It's always sort of the weakest one because it's many of the horses that weren't good enough to get into the Kentucky Oaks. And it's for the horses that, you know what, if they were that good, you've got the Mile Acorn coming up at Belmont Park, which is a grade 1 as opposed to this. It's one of those instances where this one, unfortunately, gets a little bit lost in the shuffle. And Red Ruby is a nice horse. I'm sure down the road she'll be able to do some good things and be competitive in some races. But plain and simple, she's going to have to improve from a speed figure standpoint if we're going to be looking at her the same way that we look at some of the big girls. We look at the Monomoy girls of the world. We look at the Midnight Bisous. We'll find out Dream Tree. She'll be coming back relatively soon as well. So I think Red Ruby's going to need to up her game, but a very, very good win here. And again, obviously very, very valuable graded victory here for her at Pimlico. The horse that you have to just draw a line through this race entirely is Good One Honey. Good One Honey was heavily fancied coming into this. A lot of people thought she was an interesting candidate in here. I happen to agree. I thought she was probably the most talented of a bunch of horses that I didn't think were particularly strong. That's why I took a shot with a 30 to 1 horse that ran like a 30 to 1 horse. But Good One Honey was pinched back badly at the start. She was a little bit slow to get out of the gate anyway. And then she was impossibly wide throughout for the rest of the run. Considering she's only started 3 times, what she had done in the first 2 starts against inferior company, I understand. There is more there to this horse than what we've seen so far. And certainly you didn't get a representative effort from her on Friday afternoon. So to me, you just completely draw a line through this one for Good One Honey. She's better than what you saw on Friday. And I think there is going to be an instance. I'd be very interested to see where they ultimately bring her back, because I think Good One Honey is a legit talent, and I think she could fit in with a couple of different spots. I don't know what a real sort of game is going to be. Is she going to be a 1-turn horse? Is she going to be a 2-turn horse? But nonetheless, you absolutely just need to strike this one out of her past performances, because she had too many things go against her in this spot. But take nothing away from the winner. The horse that was clearly the best on Friday afternoon was Red Ruby for Kellen Gorder, 89 buyer, 112 time form U.S. rating. An important race, historically, for older horses anyway, is the Pimlico Special, and that was run again on Friday afternoon. Again, a sloppy track, unfortunately, but here was the field. 8 were signed on. It was a pretty wide-open betting board, to be honest with you. The favorite was 5-2, but you had, 7 horses that were all 8 to 1 or less, and you only had 1 horse that looked like a rank outsider. That's one of my favorites, Discreet Lover, and he actually ended up running pretty well in this spot. But you could have gone a number of ways to get a decent price in here, and really, it came down to a couple different things. Who would handle the wet racetrack? How was the pace going to play out? Because it looked like on paper there was plenty signed on, and truth be told, there was 1 horse in this race that if he showed up with his A effort, everybody else was likely running for second. And that horse was Irish War Cry. And guess what? We got his A effort on Friday afternoon, the stretch run of the Pimlico Special.
In front by 4 lengths from One Liner in second to Fleet Willie, untrapped on the outside. Rated R Superstar is well back and wide. Into the stretch, Irish War Cry. Jose Ortiz going to the whip. A 4-length lead. One Liner chasing. Untrapped is in third to the outside. And Discreet Lover is moved to 4th. Irish War Cry with a 16th left to go. Irish War Cry poured on the speed today in the Pimlico Special. Irish War Cry to win by 5. Photo second. One Liner then untrapped.
Irish War Cry gets the job done as the 4 to 1, what was he, 3rd choice in this spot behind the likes of Something Awesome and One Liner. Again, 4 to 1 for Irish War Cry. A dead heat for second in here with One Liner and untrapped. Odds of 7-2 and 8-1 on those two entrants, respectively. Your fourth place finisher was Discreet Lover again. Acquitted himself nicely at odds of 20-1. Let's talk a little bit about Irish War Cry. 7 times in the exacta from 12 lifetime starts, 5 of them victories, over $1.25 million in career earnings. Owned by Isabel De Tomaso, trained by Graham Motion, bred by Isabel De Tomaso in New Jersey. Ridden to victory by Jose Ortiz in the pedigree at the bottom of the screen by Curlin out of a Polish numbers mare named Irish Sovereign. Now, here we go. 100 buyer speed figure, 129 time form U.S. rating for Irish War Cry. I can understand it looks a little bit like there wasn't a heck of a lot of running going on behind him. One liner was right there throughout, and I know Untrapped made a mild move, but he was basically third throughout the majority of this running as well. So I suppose you can look at that and say you're a little bit concerned. Maybe this was a bit of a merry-go-round. I thought Irish War Cry looked as good as he has looked, really, boy, in quite a long time. And I don't think there's any sort of coincidence here. I'm going to be looking at it right now. I'm going to pull up the PPs, and we can see, obviously, if you're watching on video.drf.com or if you're watching on YouTube, you've already seen these, or you're going to see these, the PPs for Irish War Cry. There's a couple things, anyway, that are striking to me. And I can't help but wonder if this is part of what his sort of bugaboo has been. When you go through his lifetime record, what are the best races on his page? Well, he won the Pimlico Special just now with a 100 buyer. He finished second in the Belmont Stakes last year with a 100 buyer. He won the Wood Memorial with a 101. He won the Holy Bull with a 101. So you got a couple of giant efforts in there for a horse. Now, what is the common denominator out of all those races? All of them are 2 turns. All of them, he is basically pushing the lead, if not outright on it. There have been other instances where they've tried to take him slightly off of the pace, and it has not worked. To me, it just becomes clearer and clearer that this is a 2-turn horse. He wants distance, and he wants to be forwardly placed, if not out on the lead. Because when he's on the lead, he wins the Pimlico Special. When he's outright on the lead, he wins the Holy Bull. When he's outright on the lead, he just tires winning in the Belmont Stakes. He just couldn't outstay a horse like Taprit. When he is forwardly ridden, hustled, pushed along, even look at a race like the Wood Memorial, where he's half length off of it basically throughout, and then he gets up and he's right there. This is a horse that he does his best running, forwardly placed in 2-turn races, and I hope that's where they keep him. Those runs at Gulfstream, I don't think it's that he doesn't like Gulfstream. Graham Motion thinks otherwise. Graham Motion knows a heck of a lot more than I do. The 2 races at Gulfstream, common denominator. Both of them are 1 turn. I don't think he's a 1-turn kind of horse. And also the way that he was running, coming from a few lengths off of the pace. I don't think that's what he wants. You can look a couple times. He has spit the bit terribly in the Gulfstream Park Mile, in the Kentucky Derby, in the Pennsylvania Derby. What are the common themes there? He's 3 lengths off of it. He's 3 lengths off of it. He's 3 lengths off of it, all at the pace call. Well, I mean, at a certain point, you know, these things, 1 or 2 things does not make a trend, but when it happens 4, 5, 6 times, then all of a sudden we've got something here to work with. I don't think there's any coincidence. This is a horse that wants 2 turns, he wants distance, and he wants to be forward. And when you do that, you get the good Irish War Cry, the horse that can go out there and win big graded stakes races, even grade 1s. And he could be a major key to the older division this year, because right now, West Coast, I would imagine they're going to wait for Del Mar or something else, but he's been gone for quite some time, and it's not as though he ran spectacularly over in Dubai. He didn't run poorly, but he didn't run awesome. And outside of him, who are we looking at for the big older sort of horses in this division? You know, you've got the likes of Accelerate, who's a very, very nice horse. You've got City of Light, very, very nice horse. But after that, Backyard Heaven, nice horse, but he's got to stay together, got to stay sound. There is a wide open situation here where a horse like Irish War Cry, if he is ridden accordingly and appropriately, there's a real scenario where this horse could end up being one of the best older horses that we have in training. I'm going to be fascinated to see if this is sort of the trend that they continue on. Use his speed a little bit. He has good speed. Put him into the run early and let him go. Make them come and catch you. Don't go and try and go and catch them. Big effort from Irish War Cry. He gets the job done in the Pimlico Special with good figures, a 100 buyer and a 129 time form U.S. rating. Had an impressive effort from a 3-year-old male on Saturday. Had an impressive effort from a 3-year-old female on Friday. Talking about the sprint division anyway. This was the field that lined up for the 33rd running of the Miss Preakness. 9 3-year-old fillies going 6 furlongs on the main track. Again, very sloppy. We understand that. But there were a couple of horses in here. Good Move was bet down to odds of 8-5. You could go with a horse like Almond Roca for Grand Motion, bet down to odds of 7-2. Or you could go with a horse like Happy Like a Fool for Wesley Ward, a horse that he's clearly thought highly of from day one, sending her over to Europe on a few occasions last year. And she's kept some good company recently. She came back in that race at Keeneland and ran well. I liked her, and she couldn't quite get there. First start off with a little bit of a layoff. She came here, and boy, was she ready to go. The stretch run of the Miss Preakness.
Enough is in third. Legendary is in fourth, and Buy Sell Hold is guided off heels of horses out to the 4 or 5 path. They're into the stretch at the 360s. The half went at 46.13, and into the stretch with a furlong left to go. And it's Happy Like a Fool. Happy Like a Fool strolling home a 5-6 length lead, leaving Artistic Diva behind. Happy Like a Fool and Tyler Gaffleone. They'll win going away by 6 or 7 at the finish. Artistic Diva, then Buy Sell Hold.
Happy Like a Fool gets the job done and runs like a fool out there on the racetrack, and I mean that in a positive way. She was very, very professional, but she ran like she was loving life out there in the slop. Gets the job done, wins by 6.5 lengths over Artistic Diva. Artistic Diva coming in from the West Coast as a 5-1 shot, and then Buy Sell Hold at a big, big number. The longest shot on the board, 34-1, rounds out your trifecta. If you had played that for $1, comes back 469.60. Let's talk about Happy Like a Fool. She's 3 of 6 lifetime, 4 times in the exacta, over $257,000 in career earnings, owned by Maribel Stable, Michael Tabor, Derek Smith, and Mrs. John Magner. Trained by Wesley Ward, bred by Wesley Ward in Kentucky, ridden to victory by Tyler Gaffleone, the pedigree at the bottom of the horse card. She's by Distorted Humor out of a Sky Mesa mare named Last of the Summer Wine. 89 Beyer and 112 time form U.S. rating for Happy Like a Fool, winning the Miss Preakness. Very interesting to see the way that she ran. I mean, she clearly just aired. Won by 6.5 lengths, came home in 12:22 when considering a horse that was more of a closer like Buy Sell Hold came home in 12:16. When they're that close and there's a horse that was actually on the front end, on the chooch, cutting out the fractions, 23:46, 57.4, stopped the clock in 10 flat. Yeah, this is a pretty big league effort from Happy Like a Fool. And there are big league aspirations and goals for this girl. Wesley Ward, he likes the 6 furlong distance more so than the 7 furlong distance. So the long-term goal for Happy Like a Fool is the Breeders' Cup Sprint against the males. He said that the overall goal for this horse is we want to make her a Grade 1 winning filly. And again, the 6 furlong distance, he just thinks is a little bit better suited. She's better suited for that than the 7/8 of a mile. He said that she is just like an absolute pony in the barn. She likes to snuggle with you, put her head on your shoulder. And apparently she's been like this from day one. So Happy Like a Fool, I think she's a very likable horse. She's very talented. And it'll be very interesting to see, again, from a tactical standpoint. I like that she's shown that she can sit a little bit. And if you think that she's going to continue to progress, and Wesley Ward very clearly thinks that she will, she could be an interesting player going forward throughout the rest of the year with the 3-year-old fillies. And then, if all goes as planned, with a date with the older males in the Breeders' Cup Sprint the first Saturday in November beneath the Twin Spires at Churchill Downs. But first things first, got to go through the motions, go through the summer, have her ready for a peak effort and wherever her next start is. But Happy Like a Fool, she was like a running fool out there Friday afternoon in the slop. She was very impressive, winning the Miss Preakness. 89 Beyer, 112 time form U.S. rating. How about we shift things a little bit here for the last recap on this week's recap edition of the Matt Bernier Show. Let's go to Woodbine back on Saturday for a graded event for 3-year-old fillies. This was the field of 8 3-year-old fillies for the Grade 3 Saline, going 1 mile and 16th on the main track. Woodbine, interesting things that we're going to have to dissect a little bit about this race because they can be a little bit misleading and a little bit distracting as far as how you want to analyze this race is concerned. But we'll get to that after we take a look at the stretch run. First things first, Dixie Moon. She was going to be a tough one, tough cookie in this spot, considering she was 8-5. She likes the racetrack, and we know what she's capable of on her best day. And also, another horse that took some money at odds of 9-5 for Mike Maker was Go Noni Go. Interesting way this entire one shook down. Let's take a look at the stretch run of the Saline.
Lamination, Avies, Mind Sharp, Dixie Moon in the centre, and many chances. It's Go Noni Go, Dixie Moon coming to the front, and Dixie Moon burst to the lead. Dixie Moon on the inside, tackled by Miss Momentum, and Miss Momentum and Dixie Moon neck and neck. It's Miss Momentum on the outside in front. Miss Momentum and Dixie Moon, and Miss Momentum has gone on to win the Saline, about a neck to a game Dixie Moon.
Miss Momentum gets the job done for Mark Casse at odds of 5-1, defeats Dixie Moon after a long stretch battle, and your third place finisher is safe to say at odds of 26-1. Tip of the cap to Jeff Bratt. If you had paid attention to the Woodbine play of the day for Saturday and you used the favorite to split the picks from Jeff and I, you would have ended up finding yourself a $2 trifecta that comes back $69. Let's talk a little bit about Miss Momentum here from Mark Casse. She's 4 of 10 lifetime, just under $200,000 in career earnings, owned by Gary Barber, trained by Mark Casse, bred by Ralph Kinder, Irv Woolsey, and Uncle Mo Syndicate in Kentucky, ridden to victory by Patrick Husbands. And the pedigree at the bottom of the horse card, you can see she is by Uncle Mo out of a mineshaft mare named Somalia. From a buyer standpoint, an 86 buyer and a 108 time form U.S. rating. Dixie Moon, an 85 buyer, a 108 time form U.S. rating. The interesting dynamics here that I was mentioning at the top for analyzing this race. The internal fraction, the half-mile call, Timeform US has color-coded red for fast, meaning it likely helped horses coming from off of the pace. And when you just look at the chart at face value, your top 4 finishers all came from off of the pace at the half. So it really looks like the race fell apart from a pace standpoint. But then you go and see that Timeform US color-coded the main track at Woodbine on Saturday is intensely speed-friendly. Now you've got a little bit of a wrinkle in this entire equation, because how do you quantify how much one helped the other and vice versa? These horses coming from off the pace, certainly if you believe that it was a fast pace toward the beginning portions, they were aided, no question. But on the flip side, was that advantage negated when you consider that the track apparently was intensely speed-friendly? Things that you as a handicapper are going to need to make a decision on. I kind of look at this and say, I feel like the race did fall apart a little bit, and okay, maybe the rest of the races were much more speed-friendly or the speed held, but I have to be honest, I think there are certain instances where the quality of the competition can play a hand in that sort of role, where maybe some of those races earlier on the card were cheaper level races, and now you had some quality fillies in here, and they just happened to do their best running coming from slightly off of it. I think it was a good effort from Miss Momentum, and personally, I think she was much the best in here, because when you looked and saw Patrick Husband start to improve going up the backside and into the far turn down on the inside portion of the racetrack, it looked like she was just going to go, if she could find a way through, and blow the doors off this field. Unfortunately, he had to wait in behind horses for quite some time. Dixie Moon got the jump on Miss Momentum, and even probably just inside the quarter pole, there was a moment where you weren't sure where Husbands was going to go with her. He angles Miss Momentum out pretty significantly. They find a seam, they split, and she finishes very well. She comes home in 30.65. Dixie Moon came home in 30.59, but really the third quarter, that's when Miss Momentum had to run considerably faster at that point than Dixie Moon did. So that sort of final closing kick, to me, it's almost as if Miss Momentum, although she finished slightly slower, if you believe this, 0.06 of a second, I actually think she ran considerably better than Dixie Moon did. This is an instance where it's a horse that this is the kind of surface that she wants, as opposed to the dirt that she'd been running on. It just simply wasn't going to be good enough. She shows up here. I believe Husbands after the race called her a monster filly, so we'll find out where they decide to go with her. She is not a Canadian bred, so she cannot run in a race like the Oaks or even the Queen's Plate, but there are plenty of instances where they're going to find spots for a girl like this. Miss Momentum, she gets the job done in the Saline up at Woodbine on Saturday afternoon. 108 time form U.S. rating, 86 buyer speed figure. Obviously, there were more stakes races run this weekend, and unfortunately, we're already really deep as far as time is concerned, so you're going to have a very, very long stakes montage coming up here. You'll have races from Pimlico, Belmont, Santa Anita, Gulfstream, another one from Woodbine from Sunday afternoon. You name it, they're all going to be in here, all the stretch runs. And a quick little mention, too, you're going to also see the Dixie in there. The reason I didn't do a serious rundown for the Dixie, or a recap, rather, is simply because they didn't run it on the turf, and it scratched down to 4 or 5 horses. So, really, the fact that Fire Away, tip of the cap, well done, good on Shug, but you gotta cut somewhere. Gotta make a decision. Unfortunately, a race like the Dixie and some other really quality races, they end up in this week's stakes montage. Let's take a look at that right now.
Here is Start with Silver, ground saving into the stretch. Start with Silver, cutting that corner, is third now. Just about 3/16 of a mile left to go. The half in 46.31. And here comes Vertical Oak in a final furlong to the lead. Ms. Locust Point and Start with Silver charging willingly down to the inside. It's Vertical Oak in front. Vertical Oak in front by 2.5 lengths. Vertical Oak in the ski pad. Vertical Oak and Start with Silver charges to second. Ms. Locust Point was third. Imprimus trying to make some headway from second. Oak Bluffs down to the inside. Fighting on, has a chance. Oak Bluffs guided off the inside, and here comes Oak Bluffs charging into second. Rocket Heat has given way. Imprimus comes away with a lead. Imprimus in front. Rocket Heat. Oak Bluffs to the outside with a 16th of a mile left to go, and here is Imprimus. Imprimus and Arad Ortiz Jr. win by 4 in the Jim McCator sprint as Rocket Heat held second. Oak Bluffs flattened out in third, then Field of Courage and Vici. Up top, Super Striking turns for home with a 6-length lead. Out in the center is Secret Message, picking up second from Peach of a Gal. Super Striking appears to have the stamina for the final furlong. Super Striking driving now, 6 in front. Secret Message rolls back again for second spot, and then it's Peach of a Gal, and strung out to the others, Stormologist has picked up fourth. Super Striking for Live Oak Plantation, and Julian Pimentel strolling home in the Hilltop all the way. Secret maybe now is trying to rally too. Into the stretch now, and it's Blue Prize who's winning that battle from Verve's Tail, opening up 2 lengths, but out of the center of track, Danger coming from the back of the pack. Song of Spring, who was dead last, is motoring home. Here comes Song of Spring. Song of Spring on the outside. A drifting Blue Prize desperately hanging on to the lead with a 16th to go, but it's Song of Spring, and Blue Prize. Song of Spring last to first winner. The inside, if good enough, all 4 have a chance as they swing for home. It is Unbridled One and Just Howard at the outside. Dionysus and Fire Away down to the rail. Unbridled One and Just Howard struggling together, and Fire Away trying to kick on the inside. A furlong left to go. Unbridled One inside, outside, Company outside. Just Howard inside, Fire Away. Just Howard, Unbridled One determined. Fire Away surging when it counts. Fire Away! Fire Away, Unbridled One, Just Howard. They're at the top of the stretch in the James W. Murphy, and it's Tap Daddy California Night. And trying to come through for the inside there, 2 off the fence as 3s over Deuces. Takedown still down to the rail. Tap Daddy finally disposed of California Night. In the meantime, it's a nice battle with 3s over Deuces and takedown for second. Tap Daddy gone. Tap Daddy and Ricardo Santana Jr. are widening at the finish, opening up under a drive by 6 lengths in the James W. Murphy. Tap Daddy. 3s over Deuces down toward the inside as they move past the quarter pole after 21 and 3 opening quarter mile, so they're into the stretch and sprinting on home. And homeward bound now, it is Girls Know Best. Girls Know Best begins to pull away by 3 lengths. And here comes Anna's Bandit from in between horses trying to get a share. Anna's Bandit 1 off the inside. Pretty Perfection on the outside. It's Girls Know Best, and she's best indeed. Girls Know Best, Pretty Perfection, and then Anna's Bandit and Chantalane and Smiling Causeway. 11.30. And Axeman the one to catch, getting away by 2 lengths from Prince Lucky in second as they move now toward the top of the stretch and into the fog, and now out of the fog, and it is Axeman cutting through the fog to a clear lead. Axeman popped the latches on top and didn't look back. As a popular favorite, Axeman by 6. Title Ready was second, Prince Lucky and Pony Up.
The stretch, Nootka Sound is holding on to the lead over 11s. Nootka Sound in front into the stretch, and Nootka Sound has a 2-length lead. 11s is all out in second. Strategic Dreams runs in third. It's Nootka Sound with the lead as they come through the stretch. Nootka Sound now by 3. 11s will be second. Nootka Sound will be the winner as she splashes home in the Soaring Softly. 11s is second, then Strategic Dreams.
Even Sense Cordiality careering away from Shy Carmelita, followed by How About Zero, who ducked in. Halo Darlin was inconvenienced and is now passed either side by Cheekaboo and Desert Steel. The leader Cordiality, Shy Carmelita sticking gamely to her guns, but Cordiality too good in the Franz Valentine. Cordiality 2.5 lengths, Shy Carmelita 4 clear of.
And they're at the top of the stretch. Stormy Embrace toward the inside, toward the outside. Sweet Tooth Haven lays down the challenge. These two 3 lengths ahead of our Angel Caitlin with 1/8 of a mile left to go. Toward the inside, Stormy Embrace to the outside. Sweet Tooth Haven takes another run at her. Stormy Embrace and Sweet Tooth Haven. These two, Sweet Tooth Haven and Stormy Embrace. Stormy Embrace, the rider stood up. The rider stood up, but Stormy Embrace wins anyway.
Still with them out 3 wide. Gutierrez hooking B squared to the extreme outside. Soifet just in behind them from accountability. At the 8th pole, Thule Fog, well developed, kicking again on the inside for Van Dyke. Well developed with his head in front once more from Thule Fog. They're followed by B squared. Ashley Love Sugar doing his best work late. Soifet coming through. A blanket finish. Soifet, the 10-year-old marvel, has won from either B squared.
Well, Summer down the outside, and Scotty's model after Code Warrior, but hasn't gone by. Now takes over, and on the outside, Scotty's model in front. The others are trying to make any inroads whatsoever. They're not doing it. Scotty's model has the Ballet Stakes well and truly won. Scotty's model by a length and a half. Second, Code
Number
Warrior.
of impressive performances in that stakes montage, and certainly a number of impressive performances in the recaps that we've done on this show, the recap edition of the Matt Bernier Show. And as we always do, let's take a look and see which ones were actually the best from a buyer speed figure standpoint. Doesn't matter age, gender, distance, surface, whatever it may be. We've got it all covered for you here. Let's take a look. These are the weekend's best performances from a buyer speed figure standpoint. 3-year-old males, Matoli, very impressive, winning the Chick Lange at Pimlico, 104 buyer. 3-year-old fillies, we have a tie with Happy Like a Fool and Red Ruby. Both of them earn 89 buyers, one in the Miss Preakness, the other in the Black Eyed Susan. 3-year-old male on turf, Prince Earl, 87, winning a maiden special weight affair at Santa Anita. 3-year-old filly on turf, Stav or Stave, however you'd like to pronounce that. 81 buyer in a non-winners of one other than out at Churchill Downs. Older male, Switzerland, 102 in the Maryland Sprint at Pimlico. Older female, Vertical Oak, 93. We saw her in that stakes montage winning the Skip It at Pimlico. Older male on turf, Imprimis, over just a complete bog of a turf course in the turf sprint at Pimlico with a 103 buyer. And the older fillies on turf, females, I shouldn't say, because again, mares at that point. Older Ultra Brat, 100 buyer speed figure, winning the Gala Rett again over an absolute bog at Pimlico Race Course on Saturday afternoon. There they are, the best performances from a buyer speed figure standpoint on the Matt Bernier Show. That's going to button things up here. But before we do that, let's take a look at the DRF TV schedule of events coming up this weekend. You've got a Memorial Day weekend, a holiday weekend coming up, and you'll have a number of really good stakes races. I believe there's a couple of grade ones out at Santa Anita that we can dive into. You're going to have all sorts of DRF bets races today. You're going to have DRF formulator angles. You'll have the Weekend Warrior. You have Watchmaker Watch. You'll have the DRF Players Podcast. You'll have Out of the Gate. You'll have the preview edition of the Matt Bernier Show. You name it, it's going to be out there. Other stakes previews left and right. Head on over to video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Forms YouTube channel. Speaking of that, if you've been watching this show live, thank you for doing so. Live.drf.com, livestream.com, Daily Racing Forms, Twitter handle @DRF Inside Post, as well as the Daily Racing Forms Facebook page. And now that I just rattled all that off, I'm realizing it's not going to be up live simply because this is being taped a day late because I was traveling on Monday. So basically what I just said, draw a line through that piece. If you're listening on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, or video.drf.com, thank you for doing so. If it is YouTube, click that subscribe button. You'll get all the latest from DRF TV and give us those thumbs up. Really would appreciate that. This has been the recap edition. We will get you ready with a preview edition coming up here in a few days. Take a look at some racing coming up the upcoming weekend. And perhaps I'll take a little bit of a long-distance look forward at what we could be expecting 3 weeks from now in Elmont, New York, with the possibility of another Triple Crown winner. Find out if Justify can punch his sort of ticket to greatness and join that sort of elite company of the number of horses that have won the United States Triple Crown. So thank you again for listening to this program. If you want to follow me on Twitter, @Bernier_Matt. If you have questions, comments, concerns on YouTube, fire away in the comment section. If you agree, disagree, have a question about something, have just an opinion, whatever else it may be, fire away and do the same on Twitter, @Bernier_Matt. Again, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll talk again with the preview edition of the Matt Bernier Show on Friday afternoon. Until then, best of luck.